When you're highly anxious, it's a known fact that you can get so stuck in your head that you can only see 6 inches in front of you. That happens on the battlefield. People get so anxious, they can't see anything except what's like right basically in front of them. Their body's shutting down, fight or flight mode, and they're trained to look beyond, look further, and even look slightly up so they can get some more perspective. They get tunnel vision. And, when we're highly anxious, we're not creative. We don't solve problems. We have more conflict. We lose our sense of humor. Life just kind of gets small. Not a good place to be. Anxiety is about control. We're trying to control. So we get fixated on what is right in our midst. And we can get out of that, and we want to get out of that. And we're going to want to find ways to get out of that because your job ain't going to be fun. Your coworkers aren't going to get along with you very well when we're highly anxious. So today's podcast episode is on 3 daily decisions that you can make that will reduce the anxiety in your life fast. And these are simple decisions. I'm going to give you tools, things you can apply and work on. And as I go through this content, one of my goals when I started this podcast over 5 years ago is to explain things in a way that you could share it with your 6-year-old and they would understand the concepts. I don't know if I always do that and speak that clearly, but that's my goal today. Practical, simple tools. So welcome to the Decide Your Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Adam Gragg. I'm a coach and a family therapist. I founded Decide Your Legacy in 2012, and what we do is so we help leaders and their teams face the issues that are holding them back and that they're avoiding so they can take productive action to make progress in their lives, progress that sticks. And from my point of view, everybody's a leader, and anxiety is one of the core issues people often do not want to face, especially the root of their anxiety, and that's what keeps them stuck. I like to share a risk that I've taken recently every episode because nothing is more important to your mental health than taking action, and nothing is more damaging than playing it safe. I had a hard conversation, a meeting that I was involved in setting up with my parents, and my dad's 87, almost 87, my mom's 78, and it was talking about what they want in their future if they had a health crisis, if they had an unfortunate situation. Just not that they're unhealthy. They are very healthy for their ages. But it was a conversation we had, and I'm glad we had it. You make your anxiety worse by feeding it. I see this with clients and friends and in myself, that we do things unintentionally that create a great deal of anxiety in our lives. There's 3 ways primarily that we feed our anxiety. One is through ambiguity. That means that we keep the problem fuzzy. We don't even know what the issue actually is because we're not stepping back from our lives and looking and seeing like, this is really the core problem in my life. And so we're anxious. If we define the problem, if we get at the root of the problem, our anxiety is no longer fed. It starts to decrease. So the other thing is we are negative. We're seeing the worst possible outcome. That's how we feed our anxiety rather than what a potential best outcome is or a most likely outcome. And we're going to tackle that in the episode today. Those first 2, ambiguity, worst outcome. And we're also going to tackle the worst thing you can do with anxiety, and that is avoidance. So if you have social anxiety and you may have a tendency to want to make excuses to not engage with people, and you can biologically make excuses. If you're afraid of some conversation, your body can kick in and say, I'm going to tell you that I'm sick. I don't feel good. You see this with kids frequently. Kids that don't want to go to school. They can, biologically, they can really be sick. I get it, but they can also make things up. And you as a parent, that's your intuition and your gut. That's why you take their temperature. That's why you look at patterns. You look at what they're not facing in their life so you can get at the core issue. And it may not be that they're actually sick. It may be that they're wanting to avoid something in their lives. People that deal well with anxiety, they do these 3 things every day. Well, I would not say every day, but they strive to do in practice, implement tools that help them reduce the anxiety in their lives. Because we want to have fun. We want to be creative. We want to enjoy our lives, right? We don't want a negative future. We want a positive future. And that's what we're going to talk about today, what these people that you can see in your life that do well with anxiety, what they're actually doing. So first decision that they make is they decide to be optimistic. And optimism is a word people don't often understand, because in my profession as a therapist for 25 plus years, there's this one tool, and there's a lot of good evidence on it's something called cognitive behavioral therapy. And so if you have gone to a therapist for depression or anxiety, there's a very good chance that that therapist utilized cognitive behavioral therapy. And cognitive behavioral therapy was started by Aaron Beck, and there is good evidence that it does help with depression and anxiety. The military utilizes it when people have PTSD. I mean, it's a common modality of therapeutic treatment, but I've been frustrated with it. And one of the reasons I'm frustrated with cognitive behavioral therapy is because there is a tendency for people to have a bad situation in their life and then to use positive thinking to overcome that bad situation in their life. So let's say they don't have the career that they want and they're really negative on themselves professionally. I haven't made enough money. I'm never going to make enough money. And so a cognitive behavioral therapist might, and it really, there's differences to how people approach this. They might tell them to focus on things like, when are you going to get a new job? And what qualities do you have that you can focus on that are really positive in your life? And what are the things that you have going that are good in your life? So it's more of I'm going to replace it with something else rather than replacing it necessarily with action. So in visualization actually fits in that category. Let's visualize yourself getting a job and doing really well in the interview and impressing people by your resume, and visualize yourself getting handed a job offer that is really a great job offer. So, but the problem with that is, yes, it will decrease your depression when you visualize those things, but it's not going to change your life unless you take some action. So instead, optimism means that things can go bad in your future and circumstances can be bad in your life, yet you have hope that you're going to learn from those and you're going to grow. And even if you don't get the job offer, you're still going to realize that may be leading you, and hopefully will be leading you in the direction of getting that job that is going to be the great career fit for you. Optimism looks at your past and has bad situations that have occurred, and you're telling yourself that I can learn something and make sense of this, and it doesn't mean it's going to actually happen in the future. Optimism is an intentional choice to have hope for the future, even if it doesn't go well, because you're realizing you can handle it. And you can train yourselves to be optimistic. So with all the clients that I've met with over the years, and over thousands of clients I've met with, I've done this activity where I help them identify negative core beliefs about themselves. And it's something that I will always continue to do. I find that people often have three major negative beliefs about themselves that harm them, that sometimes they're aware of and oftentimes they are not aware of. And so one of those common beliefs, and I'll just share my own, I have a perfectionistic mentality. I got to do it perfectly, and it's more of my value comes from my performance and how I achieve things and the results that I get. So whether people like me, or whether I close the deal, or whether I get the client, or whether the client does well, or whether the speaking evaluations are positive, I look at metrics, and I have historically until the last month looked at metrics too much because I've delegated that to two other people. But that is a perfectionistic mentality. My value doesn't come. I know that cognitively. I know, like, in reality, like, my value doesn't come from my performance or my checking account or my success level or whatever. But what I have to end up doing that actually helps me to become optimistic is not to just tell myself and visualize myself not being perfectionistic and letting go, although that can actually be helpful for me, but it's only helpful if it's added to situations, if I add action to it, and if I reflect on situations in the past where I wasn't perfect and things actually went well. Because those situations show me that it's really worth putting myself out there and making mistakes and getting embarrassed, because I have situations where those things led to really good outcomes. And that gives me optimism that I can do things in the future that are going to lead to good outcomes as well. That's cultivating a hopeful a hopeful mentality about your future, because you can feed your fears, and that's anxiety, or you can feed your hope. And so if I was going to challenge somebody to take one small step here, is if they're going to be able to tell themselves, what do I tell myself that harms me? Like, I'm never going to get good things in my life. And it's not unhelpful to say, well, where does that thought actually come from? But what is most helpful is to actually reflect on, well, what are times where I have gotten good things in my life, and people have come into my life where they've helped me, and the situations I'm in now where good things are coming that are opportunities in the future that can be better than the ones, or even, bigger and brighter than the ones I've had in the past. And you start to actually feed those thoughts and realize that I have this hopeful future ahead that I can cultivate. And I have other negative thoughts about myself, like I'm not good enough and I'm broken, I made too many mistakes. But then I have evidence, clearly for me, for Adam, of situations where I have been good enough for people that do care about me, and where even though I'm broken, I can help other people. The chances of me helping other people actually go up quite a bit as I utilize my challenging life situations to help them. And I have sat with just countless clients who have had situations where they're very depressed about what has happened in their life, and then now they can say, I'm grateful for it, because they're using it to help other people. It becomes their greatest asset. Our past and our brokenness and our challenges become our greatest asset. So I look at specific examples, specific people that would be evidence that I am good enough, that I do have what it takes, that I have performed in the past, that I have had an impact in the past. And that energizes me to face the day with courage. And another core belief I have is that avoiding hard conversations is actually the best path to take. It gets worse when I address things. It gets worse when I face things. But yet, if I focus on situations in my life, there's evidence that when I've actually faced things in my life, it's gone really well. And it's led to breakthroughs in clients' lives and breakthroughs in my life. So why do I not want to have these hard conversations? So what I'm doing here is I'm putting myself in a hopeful space where I'm almost at times, and I say almost, but almost, and sometimes I am at times excited to go and face those things in my life. So, I can look back at my divorce, which was devastating for me, and I can look back at relationships in my life that, friendships and even business relationships that I feel like were ended and were devastating at the time. And I can look back and say now, like with an optimistic mentality, wow, I didn't wish that would have happened, but the lessons that I learned have been so powerful that I wouldn't be the person that I am today had I not gone through that situation. And that's very encouraging. It's still painful at times, but it's much less painful than it was. And it gives me an incredible amount of hope. It gives me the kind of hope that will propel me away from safety, because I hate to tell you, but if you're listening to this episode, you do have in parts of your life an orientation towards safety. You do have that impact in your life every day. I just don't want you to hold it back. So if you want to practice this, well, do this activity. If you can, just think about one thing that you believe about yourself that harms you, and think about outliers to that situation, evidence that's contrary to that actually happening. And put some specific examples down that you can reflect on. And that will start to make a shift for you. So the second decision that people make who deal with anxiety really well is they find a way to see that they have multiple options in the situation that they're facing, in their life, in the challenges that they have, in the areas where they feel like they want to grow but aren't growing and are stuck. They have multiple options. So one example is expanding your time horizon. So if I told you, hey, tell me right now what your biggest goals are in your life, and I don't give you a specific time horizon, I just say, well, what do you really want to achieve at a high level right now? And you list some things off. Maybe it's revenue growth. Maybe it's a certain level of clients. Maybe it's relationships. Maybe it's some kind of health goal. Maybe it's some kind of a social goal. And then you give me and you share those results. And then I tell you, well, hey, how long will it take you to get there? And you throw out some kind of number, say 5 years. And then what I do is I say, well, what if I gave you 25 years to achieve that? And what would they say? Most people would say, well, yeah, I can do that. Like their eyes would get bright. They would start to have a different hopeful orientation because now they have more time. What they did is they expanded their time horizon to achieve their goals. And what that did is actually decrease their anxiety. It freed them up because now they can be creative. They don't have this time pressure that they were putting on themselves. And it actually helps them become more efficient and enjoy their work even more because they have more time. So it's like if you were a wedding photographer and you were all getting ready for this wedding you're going to record and film on Saturday. But then they called you and said, you know what? We postponed the wedding for a week because my grandfather got sick. And, it's a small wedding. There's only 20 people there. It's in town. They all live in town. Everybody has said that they can come next weekend. You, as the person getting ready for that wedding, might feel a sense of relief because now you have more time. Maybe you were crash preparing to get ready to film that wedding. That's what I'm talking about here. So you can do that in your own life. You can expand your time horizon. If you're anxious about something, well, maybe you're anxious because you procrastinated, but you can still expand your horizon, meaning that if you take some time to prepare now, you have multiple outcomes. I mean, maybe you aren't as prepared, but expanding your horizon, it gives yourself options to learn from the mistakes that you make, options to learn from the people that you're going to meet. Even saying to yourself, it doesn't have to be perfect. I know how to do this, and I can do my best based on the conditions. And maybe next time, that's one of your options is to learn so you're prepared more in advance. I've read this great book recently. It's called Primal Intelligence. And we'll go ahead and link to that in the show notes as well. And it's been very impactful. One of the things that he notes is that fear, and this is articulated in a way that I really believe. So fear is your brain telling yourself to have a better plan, to create a better plan. And when you are anxious or afraid, ask yourself, is this connected to my past or is this connected to my future? If it's connected to your future, there's a very good chance it's connected to not having a very good plan. And you need to put more energy into your plan. So if you want to start working on something like expanding your time horizon, well, what I'd encourage you to do is determine other alternatives to your path forward. And it's going to probably take you going to somebody, and I would encourage you to go to somebody that you trust. And if there's something causing you stress, like a parenting issue, and you don't know how to actually handle this, and you probably actually do this, and you're actually doing your own, I can almost guarantee you've applied this to situations in your life, but you are stressed about parenting, and you go to one of your friends who's a good, trusted role model for you. Maybe they're a parent, maybe they're not, and you share your plan. And then you ask them for feedback. And in that feedback, they're going to give you alternative plans that you can face. So they could say, well, you could do this, you could do that, you could do this, and you'll leave that conversation when you thought you just had plan A, and now you have plan B, C, and D. And some of those plans might be what you can implement if it doesn't go the way that you had hoped, which is really encouraging. In some of their plans, you might not want to implement at all, but you had a person that you trusted to give you different alternatives, different paths you can take. Even maybe it's just reading a good book on parenting that's been helpful to them, but they're sharing that with you in the process. So if you found this helpful, I have this link in the show notes to this lead. It's a PDF, and it's an article called 3 Ways to Overcome Anxiety, which explains so much of this content that you're listening to today. So you want to look at that article, check it out, and then there's actually a link to a PDF called 5 Days to Overpowering Anxiety. And I give you tools that you can employ. They're exercises that you can use. It takes about 15 minutes to do each exercise, and each one's going to help you deal with anxiety really for the rest of your life. And so this is some content that I put this thing together probably 5 years ago, and I've redone it and freshened it up some. So you want to check that out and send it to people. Super helpful. There's no cost to that. I mean, just go through this thing, check it out, hit the link, 5 Days to Overpowering Anxiety. So the third decision I've already hinted at here, and that is that people that cope with anxiety well, they do implement a plan in their life. So they have a health plan, they have a diet plan, they have a business plan, not a complicated plan. This is the problem, is when people think of having a plan, they make it so complicated. and they make it perfectionistic, like they have to go step by step to implement this plan. Well, a plan is driven by a vision. A vision is idealistic, but the vision is not your plan, and the plan is not idealistic either. The plan is something that is flexible and you can adjust based on good, new information. But a plan is very helpful. So when I have a plan, then I have at least something that I can focus on that takes my attention away from all these distractions that I can use as excuses, because I can justify them and say, that's a good thing, and it's related possibly to where I want to go, but it's not going to be the best next step towards where I want to go. So yesterday, for example, we were talking about, we had two main topics with my parents. I mean, one was to talk about what they want if there was an emergency. Like, where would you want to live? And I was joking, like, I asked my parents, I said, well, if mom died, Dad, what would you want to do? And I listed some things out from our last conversation, and it said, he wants to be independent and live in a social environment. Then I added to that list, I said, and be around a bunch of hot women. And my dad laughed. And then my mom chimed in and said, exactly. I guarantee he's going to get married right after I die. She said that for like the last 20 years. It's so funny. He's 87, but he's a very active 87-year-old. But you know what? My mom especially wanted to resist even answering the question, but they did, and we got it in writing in some minutes, and I sent it out to them, and then my mom thanked me for it today, said that was really helpful. But it was creation of a plan. At least they have some next step if some emergency actually occurred. But you do something. You get something written down. Recently, my business coach, Dan, with Circle Consulting, he's been very helpful for me. He encouraged me to create a 10-year plan for the business, which I have, but I need to put, and I want, again, want is a anxiety decreasing word. Need is an anxiety increasing word. Want implies you have options, and need implies that you have pressure. You have like, I need to do that. I need to make this amount of money. I need it. But then again, if it creates anxiety, it actually doesn't make you more money. It doesn't make you a better business leader or more creative. Want does. Want is a desire. I want this. That's exciting. I want to go on that date. I want to spend that time with my wife. I want to spend that time with my kids. I want to launch that new product. I want to start a business. I don't need to. I don't need to get the sale. I want to get the sale because I can help them. That's very different. So we commit to a plan. And it could be a plan for your day. It could be a plan for your weekend. It could be a plan for your evening. But you're committing to something. And, this weekend, this last weekend, I ran a 10K trail race in Oklahoma. And my running partner was a very, very good runner. He's one of my best friends. His name's Dave. And he was a very good runner in college. And he's a good athlete. He's in very good shape right now. He's probably 56, 57, no, maybe 55. He listens to almost every episode, I think, so, or a lot of them. So he's going to correct me on this if I don't get it right. But just having him as my running partner is a part of my plan. It decreases my anxiety because he knows more about running than me, because he was a distance runner in college at Kansas State, and he's run a lot of different races, and he's very into running, and he's very into nutrition and all the things that go into running. So I can ask him questions. I can just use him as my pacer because I know that if I run with Dave, I'm probably going to be at a good pace. If I don't, and I get ahead of Dave, he's pacing based on the knowledge that he has of racing. And this one was a race that had a lot of elevation to it, and it actually had a lot of downhill, and it's on a trail, it's on rock. And so that's part of my plan, just knowing I'm going to run with Dave. Very cool. So you can create a plan. And that's one of the things that we do at Decide Your Legacy is we help people create a plan for their future. We ask you the questions that you're not going to be asking yourself most likely. In fact, most people say, well, why didn't I create this on my own? Well, you're not going to ask these questions. They're questions that get you thinking in a new, unique way. They're mindset, perspective shifting type questions, but it's creating a plan that you can get excited about and look at and focus on every day. So it's one of the things I do every day. I focus on my legacy plan. And we help clients, all of our clients, it's part of the process is they're creating a plan for their future. And it's a plan that we co-create. I mean, they create, but I give them and we give them some feedback by asking questions. I mean, the feedback is not direct feedback. It's asking them questions so they can clarify it more and more. And it can become more and more exciting because they see that it's filled with hope and it's filled with this bright future that they didn't even know was possible. Super exciting, but it is a plan. Just like your financial planner, they're giving you a plan that's going to decrease your anxiety. Just like your health coach, they're giving you a plan that's going to decrease your anxiety. Just like your travel agent. When you go on a trip, they're not overbooking your schedule. They're listening to you. They're figuring out what would be most enjoyable for you, what you want to achieve on your trip, what kind of activities you want to engage in. And then they're giving you a plan that's realistic with your feedback based on what they know about that area of the country. So my sister's a travel agent, escape artist travel. So she does that. She's done that for me. And it's been so helpful because I would overbook my agenda. Instead, she gives me one kind of cool thing in the morning, one kind of cool thing in the evening, and we can fill in the rest. But those things are planned, and it depends on where we are. When we're in Rome, we do as the Romans do. We go to certain places in Rome that are cool. When we've been in France, we've done certain things that are cool to do in Paris. And I've done a lot of these trips with my daughter, Emerson, so she can attest to the fact that having a plan decreases anxiety. And part of that plan, and not having a plan at times, gives me the freedom to sleep in, or gives me the freedom to just walk around. But it gives me the margin I want to and I need to enjoy my life. So you create a plan for your future. So in summary, if you want to decrease your anxiety in your life, and there's a huge benefit to doing so, we'll do these three things, because this is what the non-anxious people do. They cultivate optimism. They expand their options. They look at numerous options. They commit to some kind of a plan. A sloppy plan is better than no plan. Get feedback on it, commit to it, and follow through. And that's what you do. So I wanted to share and wrap up with this situation with my parents. We had this anxiety-producing situation. I knew it was. It produced anxiety in me. It was a brave thing for us to do. All of me and my siblings, we sat down. Brandon and Erica did a great job. And the first time we had a meeting like this, which was back in December, my mom did not want to engage. In fact, she wanted to leave. She didn't want to be there. And now she's actually saying it's beneficial. Interesting. And this happens a lot when I work with business leadership teams and business ownership teams. When we do that at Decide Your Legacy, is at first, there's a lot of anxiety because we're talking about core issues. And sometimes people say negative things and they don't want to do it. And I can just see them squirm. And I used to get really anxious about that, but I don't get nearly as anxious because I know how important it is for us to talk about this stuff, and then how impactful it is when we finish this coaching session. And so at the meeting I had, which I didn't call it a coaching session with my parents, but at the very end, I have people express at some level how useful it was to have this meeting. And everybody expressed that it was highly useful in my family. My mom, dad, in their own way. I didn't have them rated. I often have business teams rated on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is like extremely useful. 1 is not very useful at all. And oftentimes when I asked them afterwards to express, well, what was most useful? Because they give it a 9, let's say. Well, what was most useful about it that led to you giving it a 9? And it's those most generally anxiety-provoking conversations initially that we had that got to a core issue is why, and what they reference as being the most useful thing. So we did that yesterday with my parents. We applied all 3 of these tools. We cultivated optimism. What's exciting about your future? What's exciting about the opportunities that you have, even if these bad situations actually occurred? Okay. We expanded the time horizon with them. We expanded the options available. We looked at different living options if something bad happened, different business options, what they could do with their business if something bad happened. Bad is I put that in quotes, so if something unfortunate or unexpected happened. And then we created some kind of a plan. And the situation yesterday was we're going to meet again in 6 weeks. And I gave them the notes from the actual meeting. That was a plan. And they had action items they were committing to based on that conversation. That was a plan. So what insight have you gained today? And what actions are you going to commit to taking? What are you going to apply? There's probably one thing that stuck out to you today. Was it your own anxiety? Was it your own limiting beliefs? What was your own mindset? Was it your avoidance? Was it the ambiguity in your life? Are you not looking at the options that you have to succeed in your business, to succeed in your relationships personally? Do something and commit and teach it to somebody else. Teach it to your 6-year-old. And I believe and I hope and I know actually that you can communicate this kind of stuff in a way that's going to make it stick for them. So apply something you learned today, because 80% of transformational change is action. Only 20% is insight. You gained insight today. Now it's time for action. To decide means that you're eliminating other options. You're committing. And your legacy is the impact that you want your life to have on other people. You decide your legacy. There's no positive change until you decide your legacy, and you must decide. And not must, but I want you to decide today to make a decision, because your legacy does depend on it. I'm going to close the way I always do today. So live the life today that you want to be remembered for 10 years after you're gone. You decide your legacy, nobody else. I appreciate you greatly, and I'll see you next time.